Welcome to KTA Production, your home for premium African storytelling and premium entertainment and content. Before we continue, please like, share, and subscribe to KTA Production for more amazing content. Today, we continue the story of Daniel and Victor, Tales of Business World, Part 2. 3 years had passed. 3 years since the partnership collapsed. 3 years since Daniel and Victor sat across from each other and realized that success alone was not enough to keep a business alive. Time had moved forward, and so had they. The city looked different now. New buildings stretched into the skyline. Businesses had opened, others had disappeared. Technology had changed as well. Markets had evolved, but one thing remained constant: competition. It was still ruthless, still unforgiving, still capable of rewarding preparation and punishing arrogance. Daniel understood that better than most. His office occupied the third floor of a modest commercial building. Nothing extravagant, no flashy furniture, no unnecessary luxury. Everything had a purpose. Structured workstations, clear schedules, organized systems. The environment reflected the man who built it. Disciplined, methodical, intentional. The company had grown steadily over the years, not explosively or dramatically, but consistently. The kind of growth that survived economic uncertainty, the kind of growth that was built on foundations rather than excitement. Daniel started reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant entered. "Sir," she said, placing a document on his desk, "you have been invited to speak at the National Business Innovation Summit next week." Daniel glanced at the document. The summit was one of the largest business conferences in the country. Investors, founders, corporate executives, government reps would be present. The people shaping the future of business. "Who else is speaking?" Daniel asked. His assistant checked the program, then paused. "Victor Adeyemi." The room suddenly felt quieter. Daniel looked up. Not shocked, not even angry, just thoughtful. 3 years, and yet hearing that name still carried a lot of weight. He nodded slowly. "Thank you." After she left, Daniel stared at the document. Memories began to surface immediately. The cafe, the proposals, the arguments, and the betrayal. The handshake that ended their business. And now, this. Across the city, Victor was preparing for the same event. His company occupied a modern office tower, larger, more visible, more aggressive. The growth he once dreamed about had finally happened, but it had come at a cost. Victor stood before a large glass window overlooking the city. The skyline reflected in the glass. Behind him, employees moved quickly through the office. Meetings, deadlines, decisions being made, everything moving at speed. Exactly how he once wanted. Yet success felt different now. More complicated, more demanding. His phone buzzed. A message from the summit organizers. Final speaker confirmations. Victor scanned the list, then stopped. Daniel Okoro. He stared at the name. For a brief moment, the noise around him disappeared. 3 years. And they would be standing in the same room once again. Not as partners, not as rivals, but as two men shaped by the same failure. Sometimes life creates distance between people, and sometimes it brings them back together. Not because the past has disappeared, but because the future has something left to say. Neither Daniel nor Victor knew it yet, but the summit would not simply be a reunion. It would become something that would bring a beginning of a challenge far greater than anything they had faced before. A challenge that would test not only their businesses, but whether trust, once broken, could truly be rebuilt. The National Business Innovation Summit attracted the kind of people who rarely found themselves in the same room. Founders, investors, executives, government officials, industry leaders. People whose decisions influenced markets, created jobs, and shaped industries. The conference center buzzed with activity from the early hours of the morning. Large digital screens displayed shadows. Attendees moved between networking sessions. Conversations filled every corner of the venue. Some discussed partnerships, others discussed funding, many discussed growth. Everyone was searching for something: opportunity, visibility, advantage. Daniel arrived early, as always. He preferred having time to observe before engaging. Dressed in a simple navy suit, he walked through the venue calmly, greeting a few familiar faces before making his way towards the speaker's lounge. Years earlier, a place like this would have intimidated him. Not anymore. Experience had replaced uncertainty. Preparation had replaced anxiety. He no longer felt the need to prove himself. His results spoke for him. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the building, Victor arrived surrounded by activity. Two members of his team followed closely behind him. His company had become known for aggressive expansion and innovative marketing campaigns. He had built a strong reputation. People recognized him instantly. Several attendees approached him before he even reached the registration desk. Victor handled every interaction effortlessly, confident, charismatic, energetic. Many things had changed over the years, but those qualities had remained. As he entered the speaker's lounge, conversations continued around him. Then he saw him, Daniel, standing near a window reviewing notes on the tablet. For a moment, Victor stopped walking. Not because he was unsure of anything, but because some encounters carry more weight than expected. Daniel sensed someone approaching and looked up. Their eyes met. 3 years disappeared instantly. The memories remained. The lessons remained. The history remained. Neither man spoke immediately. Then Victor smiled slightly. Daniel. Daniel returned the gesture. Victor. Simple, professional, controlled. Yet both understood there was more beneath the surface. Victor extended his hand. Daniel looked at it briefly, then shook it firmly. No hesitation, no resentment, just acknowledgement. Congratulations, Victor said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. For what? Victor smiled. I've been following your company. You've done pretty well. Daniel nodded, and so have you. The exchange was genuine. That surprised both of them, because for years, each had expected this moment to feel different, awkward, tense, maybe uncomfortable even. Instead, it felt strangely calm. Not because the past no longer mattered, but because they had grown beyond it. Before either could say more, an event coordinator entered. The opening session begins in 10 minutes, she announced. The speakers began gathering the materials. The room slowly emptied. Victor glanced towards Daniel. After the event, he said, "We should talk." Daniel considered the suggestion, then nodded. "I think we should." The opening session was a success. One speaker after another shared stories of growth, innovation, leadership, and resilience. When Daniel's turn came, he spoke about sustainable growth, about systems, about structure, about building businesses capable of surviving difficult seasons. The audience listened attentively. His words carried weight because they came from experience. Later, Victor took the stage. His presentation focused on adaptation, speed, opportunity, the importance of acting before competitors. His confidence energized the audience. His perspective inspired them. Interestingly, neither approach was wrong. They were just simply different. And perhaps that had always been the real lesson. During the lunch break, attendees flooded the networking hall. Business cards exchanged hands, conversations multiplied, opportunities emerged. Then, across the room, something unexpected happened. A woman approached both Daniel and Victor separately. She introduced herself as Evelyn Grant, an international business strategist representing a consortium of investors seeking partners for a major expansion project. A project unlike anything either of them had encountered before. The proposal was ambitious. The budget was enormous. The potential impact stretched beyond a single city beyond a single country. And as Evelyn spoke, one detail immediately captured their attention. The consortium was not looking for one company, it was looking for two. Two leaders, two complementary organizations, two people capable of combining strength to accomplish something neither could achieve alone. Evelyn smiled. We spent 6 months studying companies across the region, she said. And strangely enough, her eyes moved between them. You two are the exact pair we wanted to meet. Silence followed. Daniel looked at Victor. Victor looked at Daniel. Neither needed to say a word because both were thinking the same thing. Not again. Sometimes opportunity arrives as a reward, sometimes as a test. And standing in the middle of a crowded conference hall, Daniel and Victor were about to discover that this opportunity was both. Some opportunities arrive with excitement, others arrive with questions. For Daniel and Victor, the proposal from Evelyn Grant brought both. The networking hall continued buzzing with activity around them, but neither man was paying attention anymore. Their focus remained fixed on Evelyn and the opportunity she had just placed before them, a partnership, together, again. 3 years ago, the idea would have felt natural. 3 years ago, they would have accepted without hesitation. But 3 years had changed many things, including trust. Evelyn noticed their silence. She smiled knowingly. I can see this is a simple conversation. Victor let out a short laugh. You could see that. Daniel remained thoughtful. What exactly is this project? Evelyn nodded. A fair question. She reached into her briefcase and handed each of them a portfolio. Inside were documents outlining a large-scale business initiative, a digital transformation program designed to help hundreds of small and medium-sized businesses modernize their operations. Marketing, branding, digital infrastructure, business development, training, everything. The project would operate across multiple regions and eventually expand internationally. The numbers alone were staggering. The budget exceeded anything either company had handled independently. Daniel reviewed the documents carefully. Victor scanned through them quickly. Their habits had not changed. What makes you think we should work together? Daniel asked. Evelyn leaned forward. Because we've studied both of your companies, she pointed towards Daniel. Your organization excels at systems, operational structure, and long-term sustainability. Then she turned to Victor. Your company excels at innovation, market expansion, and aggressive execution. Victor folded his arms, and separately, Evelyn smiled. Separately, you're both strong. Then her expression became serious. Together, you'd be exceptional. The words lingered, not because they were flattering, because they sounded believable. That was what made them dangerous. Success has a way of making people confident, failure has a way of making them cautious. Daniel carried caution, Victor carried confidence, the same traits that once built their partnership and later destroyed it. Daniel closed the portfolio. What's the timeline? Evelyn seemed pleased by the question. Most people would have asked about the money first. 12 months for the initial phase. Daniel nodded slowly. Reasonable. Achievable. Victor asked a different question. When do you need an answer? Evelyn's response came immediately. 1 week. Victor almost smiled. Daniel almost frowned. Again, their instincts moved in opposite directions. 1 week felt generous to Victor. 1 week felt short to Daniel. Evelyn stood. I know this is a significant decision. She handed each of them a business card. Think about it carefully. And she paused. There is one more thing. Daniel looked up. Victor did the same. Evelyn's expression softened slightly. Our investors specifically requested for the two of you. Why? Victor asked. Evelyn smiled. Because your story is known. The room suddenly felt quieter. The separate rebuild to collapse. She shrugged lightly. In business circles, people talk. Daniel exchanged a glance with Victor. Neither seemed comfortable with that reality. Evelyn continued anyway. Our investors believe the lessons you learned separately could make this project successful. Then she added one final sentence. Provided you've actually learned them. With that, she walked away, leaving the two men standing alone, again, just like old times. For several moments, neither spoke. The noise of the conference gradually returned around them. Attendees continued networking, presentations continued, business moved forward. But Daniel and Victor remained where they were, thinking, processing, evaluating. Finally, Victor broke the silence. "This is huge." Daniel nodded. "Yes, it is." Victor looked at him. "You're already looking for reasons not to do it." Daniel almost smiled. "And you're already looking for reasons to say yes." Victor laughed. The observation was accurate. "Maybe," he said. Daniel folded his arms. "Maybe that's exactly why we're standing here." Victor smiled faded slightly, because he understood what Daniel meant. Their differences had always been their greatest strength, and their greatest weakness as well. Victor looked down at the portfolio in his hands, then back at Daniel. "So what happens now?" Daniel thought for a moment, long enough to make Victor impatient. Then he answered, "We evaluated properly." Victor rolled his eyes. Some things truly never changed, but this time Daniel continued. "Together." Victor paused. The word landed differently than he would have years ago. Together. Not separately, not secretly, just together. For the first time since the summit began, a small sense of possibility emerged. Not certainty, not trust, not yet, but possibility. Trust is not rebelled through words. It's rebelled through evidence. One conversation cannot restore what took years to break. One handshake cannot erase old wounds. And one opportunity, no matter how attractive, cannot magically solve unresolved history. Daniel understood that. Victor was beginning to. 3 days had passed since the summit. 3 days since Evelyn Grant had presented the opportunity that neither of them could ignore. The proposals sat on both of their desks, reviewed, highlighted, analyzed, questioned. Yet neither had given an answer. Not to Evelyn, not to each other. Because this decision was no longer about business alone. It was about whether they could work together without repeating the mistakes that nearly destroyed everything. Daniel arrived first. The meeting location was intentional. Not his office, not Victor's office. Neutral ground. A private conference room in a business center downtown. No memories, no emotional advantage, just a table, 2 chairs, and a decision waiting to be made. Daniel placed several folders neatly in front of him. Final projections, operational requirements, risk assessment, implementation timelines. He had spent the last 3 nights studying every detail, not because he doubted the opportunity, but because preparation had become part of who he was. 20 minutes later, Victor entered, carrying only a tablet. Daniel noticed immediately. "You brought half a library." Daniel looked at the folders. "You brought almost nothing." Victor laughed. Some things truly never changed. He sat down. For a moment, neither spoke. The atmosphere wasn't tense, but it wasn't relaxed either. It was cautious. The way people behave when crossing a bridge that had once collapsed beneath them. Finally, Daniel opened the first folder. "I reviewed the numbers." Victor nodded. "So did I." Daniel slid the document across the table. "What do you think is the biggest risk?" Victor answered immediately. "Execution." Daniel raised an eyebrow, not the answer he expected. Victor continued. "The project is massive. Multiple regions, multiple teams, tight deadlines." He leaned forward. "If execution fails, everything fails." Daniel nodded slowly. A few years ago, Victor would have focused entirely on growth. Now he was discussing risk. That had to matter. "What do you think the second biggest risk is?" Daniel asked. Victor didn't answer immediately this time. He looked directly at him. "You and me." Silence. The kind that neither of them would have tolerated years ago. Daniel nodded. "Agreed." Growth often reveals itself in unexpected ways. Not through confidence, but through self-awareness. Years earlier, both men would have spent their energy defending themselves. Now, they were acknowledging reality. And reality was simple. The project could succeed. But only if they succeeded first. Victor leaned back in his chair. "So let's stop pretending." Daniel looked at him. Victor folded his arms. "You don't fully trust me." Direct. Necessary. Daniel considered his statements, then answered honestly, "No, I don't." Victor nodded, not offended, not surprised. "Fair." A few seconds passed, then Victor spoke again. "I don't completely trust myself either." That got Daniel's attention. He looked down briefly before continuing. "The version of me from 3 years ago would accept this deal today." Daniel listened quietly, not planning, not putting systems in place, no difficult conversations. Victor shook his head. "I just chased the opportunity." Daniel leaned back. "And now?" Victor smiled faintly. "Now I know opportunities aren't the problem." Daniel already knew the answer, but he asked anyway, "What is?" Victor met his case. "Ego." The room felt silent again. Not because the answer was dramatic, but because it was true. There are moments in life when growth becomes undeniable, not because someone claims they've changed, but because their perspective proves it. Daniel saw something different in Victor that day. Not perfection, not complete transformation, but maturity. After a long pause, Daniel opened another folder. "This project needs leadership." Victor nodded. "Agreed." "It also needs accountability." "Agreed." "No independent decisions." Victor smiled. "I knew that was coming." Daniel didn't smile back. "I'm serious." "So am I," Victor said. Daniel studied him for a moment, then continued. "Major decisions require both approvals." Done. "Client communication remains transparent." Done. "Shared access to everything." Done. Victor answered every condition without resistance. And somehow that worried Daniel more than disagreement would have, because now the conversation felt more real. For years, Daniel had believed trust was something people earned once. Experience had taught him differently. Trust must be maintained, protected, reinforced. The meeting continued to nearly 3 hours, discussing structures, responsibilities, expectations, contingencies. The kind of meetings they should have had years ago. And perhaps that was the point. Neither man was trying to build a business anymore. They were trying to build a framework strong enough to survive success. As the meeting came to an end, Victor stood. "So what's your conclusion?" Daniel closed the final folder. His answer came slowly, carefully. "I think the project can work." Victor nodded. "And us?" Daniel looked at him for several seconds before answering. "I don't know yet." Victor absorbed the response, not offended, just challenged. Because rebuilding trust was never supposed to be easy. Some decisions are made in seconds, others require days of reflection. The opportunity presented by Evelyn Grant belonged to the second category. By the end of the week, Daniel and Victor had analyzed the proposal from every angle. Financially, operationally, strategically, they had questioned assumptions, reviewed projections, identified risks, created contingency plans. The process was far more rigorous than anything they would have done years earlier. And that alone revealed how much they had both changed. Yet, despite all the planning, one question remained: would they do it? The answer came on Friday morning. Evelyn had arranged a final meeting at the headquarters of the investment consortium. The building itself reflected the scale of the opportunity. Modern architecture, glass walls, advanced technology, kind of environment where major decisions were made every day. Daniel arrived first. Victor arrived shortly afterwards. This time, neither seemed surprised, neither commented. The old competition about who arrived first had disappeared years ago. Inside the conference room, Evelyn waited with several members of the investor group. Some were executives, others advisors. A few represented international firms. Each person at the table had reviewed both companies extensively. They knew the numbers, the track records, the reputations, and perhaps most importantly, the history. After brief introductions, Evelyn got straight to the point. Have you reached a decision? Several investors leaned forward slightly, looking at Daniel and Victor, waiting for a response. Daniel looked towards Victor. Victor looked back, a simple glance. 3 years earlier, one of them would have answered alone. Today, neither did. Daniel spoke first. We have. Then he paused, deliberately allowing space. Victor continued. We're prepared to move forward. The investors exchanged brief looks. Evelyn smiled, but Daniel wasn't finished. They prepared to move forward under specific conditions that immediately caught their attention. Years earlier, Daniel would have accepted caution, Victor would have accepted opportunity. Now they were presenting something stronger, a framework, a structure designed to protect the project from the very mistakes that had once destroyed them. Daniel opened the document, the result of several long meetings, several difficult conversations, and uncomfortable truths. He began outlining the governance structure, joint approvals for major decisions, transparent reporting, shared access to project data, committees, clearly defined responsibilities, risk management procedures, conflict resolution mechanisms. Every safeguard reflected a lesson learned from failure. Victor added details regarding execution strategy, regional expansion plans, performance measurement systems, talent acquisition, innovation initiatives. Together, the presentation flowed seamlessly. When they finished, the room remained quiet for several seconds. Then one of the investors spoke, an older woman with decades of business experience. "I have a question." Daniel nodded, "Of course." She looked directly at both men. "What happens if you disagree?" The question landed heavily, because everyone in the room knew how much it mattered. Victor looked towards Daniel. Daniel did the same. Both smiled slightly, not because the question was funny or easy, but because he finally knew the answer. Daniel spoke first. "We will disagree." A few investors exchanged curious glances. Victor nodded. "Frequently." A few people laughed. The tension eased. Daniel continued. "The difference is that disagreement is no longer a problem." Victor finished the thought. "Poor communication is." Failure teaches lessons success often cannot. Success rewards behavior, and failure reveals it. The meeting continued for another hour. Questions, clarifications, negotiations, final adjustments. Eventually, everything was complete. Contracts were placed on the table. The opportunity was real. The decision was final. Evelyn looked at them. "Before we proceed, I want to ask one final question." Daniel and Victor listened. Evelyn smiled. "Why now?" Neither answered immediately. Then Daniel finally spoke. "Because 3 years ago we were trying to build a business." Victor nodded. "And now we're trying to build something bigger than ourselves." The investors exchanged approving looks. Evelyn smiled, widened. "That's exactly what we hoped you'd say." One by one, signatures were placed on the document. The agreement became official. The partnership became real. The project became theirs. After everything was concluded, Daniel glanced at Victor. "Strange," Victor said. "What is?" he asked. Victor laughed softly. 3 years ago, I would have been celebrating already." Daniel smiled. "And now?" Victor looked out at the skyline. "Now I know signing the contract isn't the most important part, it's just the easy part." Daniel nodded. For perhaps the 100th time in their lives, they had agreed completely. The agreement had been signed, partnership had been formed, opportunity had been secured. Now, all they had to do was move forward together. 3 weeks after signing the agreement, Daniel and Victor found themselves immersed in the largest projects of their careers. The pace was relentless. Regional teams were being assembled, training systems were being developed, technology platforms were being integrated. Dozens of businesses had already enrolled in the first phase of the transformation program. Everything seemed to be moving according to plan. For the first time since reuniting, Daniel and Victor felt cautiously optimistic. One Monday morning, the project leadership team gathered for their weekly strategy meeting. The atmosphere was productive, reports showed strong momentum, enrollment numbers were exceeding expectations, investor confidence remained high. Early feedback from participating businesses was overwhelmingly positive. Victor stood beside the digital screen displaying regional growth projections. "If this trend continues," he said, "we'll reach phase 1 target 2 months ahead of schedule." Several team members nodded. The numbers supported the claim. Daniel reviewed another report. "Only if quality remains consistent." A few people smiled. Some things never changed. Victor laughed. "And there he is." Daniel didn't react. He simply continued reading. The room appreciated the balance. Victor pushed growth. Daniel protected sustainability. Together, they created stability, exactly as intended. Then the conference room door opened. Evelyn entered unexpectedly. Immediately, Daniel noticed something unusual. She wasn't smiling. The room grew quiet. Evelyn rarely interrupted scheduled meetings, and when she did, it usually mattered. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but we need to discuss something. The atmosphere changed instantly. Business leaders learn to recognize warning signs, not because they enjoy problems, because experience teaches them to notice shifts before others do. Daniel sat forward. Victor folded his arms. Evelyn placed several documents on the table. We've received reports from multiple regions. Victor glanced at the papers. What kind of reports? Evelyn answered carefully. Competitive activity. Daniel picked up one of the documents. His eyes narrowed. The report detailed a rapidly expanding consulting company operating in the same markets they were entering. The company had appeared almost overnight. Aggressive marketing, heavy recruitment, unusually low pricing, large promises, fast expansion. The pattern felt similar, too familiar. Victor reviewed another page. The company wasn't on any market analysis. Evelyn nodded. Because 6 months ago it barely existed. Daniel continued reading. The company name appeared at the top of every report. Titan Growth Solutions. Names mean little, actions mean everything. Yet something about the report bothered Daniel. Not the competition itself. Competition was normal, expected, healthy even. No, what bothered him was the speed, the precision, the timing. Every move Titan Growth Solutions made seemed specifically designed to interfere with the expansion. Recruiting talent from target regions, approaching enrolled businesses, launching campaigns immediately after a project announcement. It felt coordinated, deliberate, strategic. Victor noticed the same thing. This isn't random. Evelyn nodded. No. One of the advisors spoke up. We believe they are targeting us directly. Daniel flipped traditional pages, financial data, market intelligence, recruitment activity, then he stopped. One particular page caught his attention. He read it again. Then the third time, Victor noticed immediately. What is it? Daniel turned the document around. At the bottom of the report was a name. Not the owner, not the founder, the strategic advisor. The person guiding the company's expansion. Victor's expression changed instantly, because he recognized it too. Marcus Kane. Silent, heavy silence. Evelyn looked between them. You know him? Daniel leaned back slowly. Years of memory surfaced immediately. Business conferences, industry workshops, negotiation meetings, competitions. Marcus Kane was brilliant. Nobody questioned that. But he was also known for something else. Winning at any cost. Victor exhaled. This isn't good. Evelyn frowned. Who is he? Daniel answered calmly. The smartest competitor I've ever met. Victor added another detail, and the most dangerous. The room became noticeably quieter. Later that evening, after the meeting ended, Daniel stood near the office window overlooking the city. Victor joined him. Neither spoke immediately, but both were thinking about the same thing. Marcus, the projects, the threats. Finally, Victor broke the silence. Think he's really coming after us? Daniel looked at the skyline. He already is. Competitions can be healthy. It can inspire innovation, encourage improvement, force businesses to become better versions of themselves. But there is a difference between competition and sabotage. And over the following weeks, Daniel and Victor began to realize that Marcus Kane was not interested in competing. He was interested in weakening them, piece by piece, without ever stepping into the spotlight. At first, the signs were subtle, easy to dismiss, easy to explain away. And then another. A talented employee unexpectedly resigned, then another, then a third. Each departure seemed unrelated, different regions, different departments, different circumstances. Yet the pattern became impossible to ignore. Every employee leaving the organization seemed to be joining the same company. Titan Growth Solutions. One Thursday morning, Daniel started reviewing personnel reports when Evelyn entered his office. She looked concerned. That immediately caught his attention. What happened? Evelyn handed him a file, 3 more resignations. Daniel opened it. His expression tightened. These weren't entry-level staff. These were experienced staff. Team leaders. People who understood internal systems. People with valuable knowledge. People who would be difficult to replace quickly. Daniel closed the file. Have they accepted offers from Titan? Evelyn nodded. All 3. Silence followed. No panic. Just calculation. Daniel's mind was already analyzing possibilities, trying to determine whether this was coincidence or strategy. Deep down, he already knew the answer. Across the city, Victor faced a different problem. A major regional partner had requested an emergency meeting. The tone of the request alone suggested trouble. When the meeting began, the partner didn't waste time. We've received another proposal. Victor remained calm. From who? The answer was predictable. Titan Growth Solutions. Victor leaned back. The rep continued. They are offering similar services at nearly 40% less. Victor almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. No sustainable company would operate at those margins. Not for long. Which meant one thing. Marcus wasn't trying to make money. He was trying to gain territory. And there was a difference. Dangerous difference. By the following week, the attacks intensified. Anonymous online criticisms began appearing. Industry blogs questioned the product's effectiveness. Rumors circulated among potential partners. False information spread through business networks. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just enough negativity to create doubt. And doubt is powerful because uncertainty spreads faster than fact. One evening, Daniel and Victor met in a private conference room after receiving another troubling report. The atmosphere felt heavier than usual. Now, not because they were losing, because they finally understood what they were facing. Victor tossed the document on the table. Another regional partner. Daniel looked at it. They are delaying participation. Victor nodded. They want to wait and see how things develop. Daniel sighed. A delay wasn't a cancellation, but enough delays could create serious problems. Victor began pacing. A habit he had never completely lost. He's attacking from every direction. Daniel remained seated, observing, thinking. He wants us distracted. Victor snapped. What? Daniel folded his arms. He wants us reacting. Marcus wasn't trying to beat them directly. He was trying to exhaust them, force them into mistakes, push them into emotional decisions, exactly the way inexperienced leaders often fail. Years earlier, the strategy would have worked. Victor would have rushed into battle. Daniel would have tried to fix everything personally. The differences would have pulled them apart. But experience changes people. Failure changes people. And perhaps Marcus King was about to discover that the men he remembered no longer existed. The next morning, Daniel requested a strategy session with the core leadership team. Everyone expected aggressive countermeasures, defensive campaigns, public responses, legal threats, something dramatic. Instead, Daniel asked a simple question. What are our clients saying? The room fell silent because nobody expected that. Most leaders focus on competitors, great leaders focus on customers. One manager reviewed the feedback reports. The results were encouraging. Businesses already participating in the program remained highly satisfied. Retention rates were strong, performance metrics remained positive, actual results continued improving. Daniel nodded slowly. Then he turned towards Victor for a moment. Then Victor smiled, because the failure understood. We stopped chasing Marcus. Daniel nodded. Exactly. The strongest response to noise is performance, and the strongest response to sabotage is consistency. For the first time since Titan emerged, Daniel and Victor were aligned completely. Not because there was no pressure, but because they had learned where to direct their attention. Victor stood, a new confidence settling over him. Not the reckless confidence of years ago. Something steadier, more controlled. So what's the plan? Daniel answered immediately. We make our clients impossible to steal. For weeks, Marcus King had been setting the battlefield, manipulating the environment, forcing reactions, creating uncertainty. Now, for the first time, Daniel and Victor were preparing to fight back. not with emotion or desperation, but with strategy. Marcus Kane believed he understood his opponent. He believed Daniel was predictable. He believed Victor was impulsive. He believed their history made them vulnerable. What he didn't realize was that the very failures he intended to exploit had already transformed them. And soon, Marcus Kane would make a mistake that could change everything. The pressure from tighter growth solutions continued. Recruitment efforts intensified, marketing campaigns became more aggressive, new offices appeared across several regions, industry publications praised his expansion, investors admired his growth, competitors feared his momentum. Everything appeared to be working for Marcus Kane. But appearances often hide important truth, and Daniel had spent enough years in business to know that rapid growth leaves traces, particularly when it's unsustainable. One afternoon, Daniel started reviewing regional performance reports when something caught his attention. A pattern, small at first, almost invisible, but once he noticed it, he couldn't ignore it. Daniel's expansion numbers were impressive, too impressive. New offices, new employees, new partnerships, new marketing campaigns, everything expanding simultaneously. Daniel frowned, then he began comparing timelines. His concern grew. Later that evening, Daniel requested a meeting with Victor. As usual, Victor arrived carrying energy into the room. What did you find? Daniel turned his laptop towards him. I think Marcus is overextending. Victor started immediately. Look at the hiring numbers. Victor studied them, then looked confused. So? Daniel clicked another file, then another, and then another. Gradually, the picture began becoming clearer. Titan wasn't simply growing, it was accelerating beyond what its infrastructure could reasonably support. New offices required management, employees required training, new clients required service delivery. Each layer created pressure, each layer required systems. He built the front end faster than the foundation. Daniel nodded. The irony wasn't lost on either of them, because 3 years earlier Victor had made the same mistake. The only difference was scale. Marcus was making it with millions of dollars. Over the remaining weeks, the company suddenly started appearing cracked, becoming more fragile. Suddenly, the company that appeared unstoppable looked considerably more fragile. Victor revealed the latest updates. A smile slowly appeared. He's cracking. Daniel shook his head. Not yet. Victor raised an eyebrow. You disagree? Daniel folded his arms. No, I just know how this situation works. Pressure doesn't destroy companies immediately. It exposes weakness. Exactly. Meanwhile, Marcus Kane remained confident, publicly at least. Inside Titan's headquarters, however, the atmosphere had changed. Meetings became longer, deadlines became tighter, executives became increasingly stressed, problems multiplied faster than solutions. But Marcus, at the center of it all, stood determined, focused, refusing to slow down. Because slowing down would mean admitting something he had spent his entire career avoiding. He might be wrong, and Marcus Kane hated being wrong. The numbers told a complicated story though. Revenue was increasing, growth remained strong, but expenses were rising faster, much faster. We need to slow expansion, one executive finally said. Marcus looked up slowly. The executive continued. We are stretching resources too thin. Another executive nodded, then another. Gradually support spread throughout the room. Marcus listened patiently, quietly, then he spoke. No. The executive exchanged uneasy glances. Then he stood and walked towards the window. We are ahead. Nobody is at our level. Marcus turned back to the room. We push harder. And there it was. The mistake. Not a financial one, not a strategic one, but an ego mistake. The belief that success validates every decision, and the belief that momentum eliminates risk. The belief that winning today guarantees winning tomorrow. Daniel and Victor had once fallen into the same trap. The difference was that failure had taught them to recognize it. Marcus had not yet learned the lesson. A month after, the consequences became impossible to hide. Several major Titan clients publicly ended contracts, employee turnover accelerated, regional managers resigned, and all the other things that included. Failure began to surface. The narrative was changing slowly but noticeably. But at project headquarters, the atmosphere was very different. Enrollment numbers remained strong, client satisfaction remained high, partnerships continued growing, not explosively, not dramatically, but consistently, the exact type of growth that Daniel preferred. Victor reviewed the latest performance dashboard, then he laughed softly. You know what's funny? Daniel glanced up. What? Victor smiled. 3 years ago, I would have wanted to be Marcus. Daniel almost smiled. 3 years ago, you were Marcus. Victor stared at him for a second, then burst into laughter. Real laughter. The kind that comes from recognizing a difficult truth and appreciating how far you've come. Growth is not measured by success alone. Sometimes it's measured by mistakes you no longer make. And while Marcus King continued racing forward, convinced speed would solve every problem, Daniel and Victor were proving something different. That discipline can outperform urgency, that patience can outperform aggression, and that sustainable growth often wins the race that no one realizes they are running. Marcus King had finally made a mistake, a costly one, but wounded competitors can be dangerous, especially when they feel cornered, because some leaders respond to failure with reflection, others respond with desperation. And Marcus was not known for reflection. The next move he made would be his most aggressive yet, and this time, he wasn't coming after their business, he was coming after them personally. And that is Business World Part 2. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to KCA Production for more amazing content and African entertainment. See you in the next video.